More of those later.
Now, he promised to implement some of the most controversial and ambitious policies in the history of American politics. But the question many people are asking is whether President-elect Donald Trump will carry them out.
Now, for the first time since being elected, he's spoken to an American TV network about what he actually might do. His priority to tackle illegal immigration, and he said he'll deport 2 to 3 million people.
So let's have a look at some of the concerns within the Mexican-American community.
USA! USA! I work with kindergartners through 8th graders. One of our 2nd graders asked, so what's going to happen to me or to my parents, or we're going to be kicked out immediately? Some of our Muslim kids, they started asking too, and then in turn it spiraled into our African American students. And you have to reassure the kids and their families and everything else that we have the best interest for them, and the country does as well.
I'm more concerned about the people that are surrounding me here in the United States that voted for him. You kind of tend to look over your shoulder now and who you can trust or who you can actually call a good neighbor or a good friend.
When I heard Donald Trump became president, I cried. I cried for not just my future, but for my family members, for my kids.
When the Yanks go marching in.
I think if they're worried about Trump, I think they worry too much. He can't do that much.
I think most people here understand that Mexico needs America and America needs Mexico, right?
Sure.
We exist, we cohabitate together.
That was filmed just after quite an important game, actually, for Mexico and America.
Yeah, it took place in Ohio, and America against Mexico. And Mexico won in the 89th minute World Cup qualifier for the next World Cup. So
there you go. Perhaps that will sort of explain some of the views. Joining us from our newsroom in Los Angeles to talk about Donald Trump, it's Anneke Green. She's a Republican commentator, previously worked for a Republican president as George W. Bush's former speechwriter. Morning to you. Thanks very much. I'm sure you will have watched this interview with President-elect Trump. What did you make of it? And particularly, let's talk about that pledge to deport some 3 million people.
Well, what I found interesting about that pledge was he actually was tempering what he had been saying throughout the campaign, which was he was saying he was going to deport all illegal immigrants. And this time he put a number on it. He said 2 to 3 million who are criminals, who have committed crimes apart from the crime of entering the country illegally. And he said not only would he deport them, he may also imprison them if their host countries would not, or their countries of origin would not take them back. So that was actually a bit of a pulling back.
OK, so it's a pulling back, but how easy is that to do?
Oh, it's quite hard. One of the challenges that President George W. Bush, who tried to work with a Republican Congress at that point to reform immigration, one of the challenges they identified is that it's hard to tell who these people are. Some estimate that up to 11 million immigrants are here illegally, many of whom have overstayed their visas. So that could be a place to start, but the ones who have overstayed their visas are not necessarily the types of criminals that Donald Trump is talking about.
And you talked, didn't you, just mentioned there that he might imprison some of them. I mean, presumably that requires enormous investment in infrastructure as well.
Yes, absolutely. One thing that they may consider doing is enlisting the aid of the National Guard of some of the states who have more of a problem. But again, I think what he was talking about were people who have committed crimes. And so those were people who would presumably be identified as having committed crimes. OK,
let's talk about the wall, because much was made, wasn't it, in the run-up to the vote about this wall. And he was very clear that it would be a wall. And already on that as well, he seems to be rowing back and talking about a fence in some parts.
Yes, and that has been in keeping with some of the things we've heard coming from Republican leadership on Capitol Hill. So he said, yes, I'm building a wall, but perhaps in some places it will be a fence. And we don't know yet if that's going to be seen by his supporters as pulling back from that pledge as well.
Just tell us about the impact on this. First of all, with his supporters, how will they take this this changing or shifting on policy that he was talking about previously?
I think they're going to wait and see what he does on his first day. He was very clear that there were a number of actions he would take his first day in office, some of which included repealing and taking back a lot of the unconstitutional executive orders that President Obama had issued. So I think it is early for them to come down from that high they're probably riding, having won the election against all of the forecasting of the media, which is another class of people that his supporters tend to distrust. So I don't think they'll yet see him as breaking promises, but they're going to wait and see.
Okay, and if he does break promises, if they perceive him to be doing that, what will the impact be?
Well, they certainly won't like it, but I mean, they won't have a chance to do anything about it as regards him for another 4 years. But you can bet that the leaders in Congress will be hearing about it, particularly the ones who have to think about another election in 2 years, which is a lot of members in the House.
There have been demonstrations in some cities, we know that. What is the atmosphere like in America?
Well, it's very interesting. I heard that in Washington, D.C., which is where I normally am, that the day after the election, it was eerily silent. And a lot of people apparently weren't going to work. There was kind of a feeling of mourning in the city. In L.A., a lot of people have put on safety pins in an expression of not being with President Trump. We've seen a few demonstrations in New York, but I think people are taking the lead from President Obama and Hillary Clinton even, who was very gracious in conceding to him in what she said, and even some of the Democratic leaders who have said, and even people of the Republican Party, like Jeb Bush, for example, who said he did not support Trump, even though he was of his party, all of whom have said, we hope that he becomes a very good leader, that he's good for the nation. And I think there's a spirit of wanting to put these things behind them, even if on social media there are still people saying this is not my president. So there is still some disappointment, and I think people on the other side who really thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win, struggling to come to grips with what has happened, but the top leaders are saying, okay, let's figure out a way to make this work. Most notably with President Obama referencing President George W. Bush, who was very gracious in opening his arms, welcoming him to the White House and trying to help him have a successful transition.
Anneke Green, Republican commentator, thanks for your time live there from Los Angeles. Thank you.